Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the PSA podcast. Tonight we're delighted to have on a man who's played for all four local clubs, has had a very successful playing career locally. His playing career was ended by a very serious injury, but that led to a very successful managerial career. Tonight we're delighted to have on the podcast Richard Forsythe.
Matthew, thank you for inviting me and thank you for the very generous introduction. I'm glad to be here.
Good stuff. Well, Ricky, we're just going to get stuck in because we've a lot to get through. I'm very much looking forward to this. I want to take you right back to the start of your career, many moons ago, whenever you were a very young teenage boy. Can you just tell us how you kind of, got into football and how you fell into playing local football?
Football has always been a big passion. Growing up where we lived, there was an area called the Green, and we would have been out playing football morning to night, picking teams. You were your favourite player, just loved playing football, and would have got yanked into the house with your mum calling you in, much to the embarrassment sometimes. Get into this house, your mum would have been shouting. But so then into organised football with Rodney McBride, I suppose. Rodney basically just loved youth football. Mm-hmm. He loved to see young people develop. He loved to see young people have fun playing a sport. Sometimes, a lot of the time, even he was a big kid himself. I can remember he organised between the different estates in Kilkeel. He would have organised tournaments. So there would have been Scrog Road, there would have been Greenville, there would have been Rooney Park had a team, Newry Street had a team. And you would have went to the opposing team's ground, so there's pitches all over the place, like the Abbey or Scrog Road or down in Rooney Park. And it would have been small-sided games, so you hear that phrase now a lot in coaching circles. And that's what it was. It was 5 and 6 aside. And he organised it before there was mobile phones or social media. Everybody knew where to be, what matches were on. And I suppose then, out of playing those estate football, he realised there was a bit of local talent. And he organised a Kilkeel Youth, and we started to train properly and entered a team in the Carnbean Youth League. And I suppose we played there for a number of years. I think it was 2 or 3 seasons. Some great experiences, some rare experiences in terms of travel to and from games. But Rodney, he was the facilitator for lots of young people playing football in this area. And I jumped on the bandwagon with him. And I suppose got an education from Rodney. Rodney would be considered of being a kind of old school coach. He would have had you down at the school training, and there was old grass hockey pitches, and you had to do maybe a lap of a hockey pitch within a minute, and that was maybe after training for 45 minutes. And he had his teams and his young people very, very fit. So that was one of his beliefs, that you needed to be able to manoeuvre, be mobile and get about. But he also was very good in terms of tactical and technical stuff, in that he had like rules. Indoor football was another big thing that he had going. He would have had just 3 hours, he would have booked the leisure centre out, and you'd have been there for the afternoon or the morning. And he had wee rules like keep the ball head high, don't put it over. So it was drilling it into you, repeating the habits, keeping the ball on the deck. So we had some great experiences. We never really won very much as a team. We were always like, there was a team called Clanrye, always seemed to pip us. But we had some great experiences and some tremendous memories. And another thing about Rodney was he didn't care on your background. Very cross-community orientated. Before, again, it was the kind of thing, this would have been at I suppose, during the Troubles, the tail end of the Troubles, and Rodney would have been bringing people together through football. So I suppose that's where we started out, Kilkeel Youth Team. Very good. And the late Rodney McBride had a big influence on lots of young people in this area, getting them into sport and into football. Absolutely. Rodney just lived for sport and young people and people coming together and having fun. And there's some great players have come through Rodney McBride. His influence, if you think about, even go back to the Feeneys, they had football in their family and stuff, but Rodney was an influence on them and youth football. To the Graham family, you had Mark, you had Ricky, you had Andy and Ian. There was other good players as well around this area. Again, lately, you've got Rodney had his Kilkeel team with Thomas Graham and Gary McKee and Kenny Graham and that team. So he had a big influence on a lot of people in terms of football. But Rodney also did a lot of youth work. We would have had the Rooney Park Sports in the summer, when there wasn't maybe as many choices for young people as there is today. He would have organised things really well, like a fancy youth coordinator role in today's world. Yes. And he was doing it on a wing and a prayer. Yeah. And I suppose that, again, it was bringing people together, making sure they had fun and were healthy. So Rodney, and it does seem strange that he's gone. It is strange. And I suppose I've talked to some people that we maybe should do something to recognise what he done. Now, I'm going to maybe say this in this interview and I'll have to commit to that, but like a Rodney McBride Foundation or something locally to give out maybe small bursaries or do something small, realistically it'd be small, but just something in his memory. And I suppose he's so many principles and the ways in which he lived and brought people together and loved the sport. I think that would be nice to be remembered.
Yes, it's definitely a good idea.
Yeah.
So from Kilkeel Youth, you then progressed into the Valley.
Yeah, so you could play for your youth team. There were some Saturdays, this is true, I would have played school or hockey for the school, and then nipped across to the Esplanade and played for Kilkeel Youth, and then maybe went and played for Valley in the afternoon. Honestly, it was crazy now when I think about it, but you just wanted to play and you were so fit. Valley was the senior football, and I suppose it was Lee Feeney, there was Richard Cranston, Roger Annett, and myself. We sort of run about, and I knew Alfie Stewart. He was a friend of my mum and dad's, and he was assistant manager at the Valley, and he got us all talked into going. And I suppose at the time, I mean this with respect to the people who were at the Valley at the time, the Valley was like the kind of the joke team in a way, in that your Kilkeels, your Annalongs, your Ballyveys all had pedigree and all had won big trophies. Valley hadn't really that pedigree. And I suppose us four, still pretty young, just thought we'll go here and play a bit of men's football.
What age would you have been?
I was probably 14, 15. Crunchy would have been 16, Lee would have been 16, Big Roger 15.
And did you see that as just an opportunity to play, or did you think going there you could maybe use it as a stepping stone to move on to somewhere else?
Well,
or did you just
play
football?
Just wanted to play football. There was never really any thought. I don't think we had any self-belief. Well, I didn't anyway, that could play any higher anywhere else. And it was just for the love of the game. But I suppose at youth football at the time, you maybe only had 6 or 7 teams in your league. So your seasons were quite short. But the men's season would have went on, full schedule from August right through to May. So we saw that as somewhere to go. But, those memories, Valley, it was a team full of characters. Like some of the men playing for the team were just great characters, great people, and it was an education as a 15 maybe year old. Also playing with people like Roger. Roger had talent at the time. He became a schoolboy international shortly after signing for Valley and moved on to Linfield. And Lee Feeney, everybody knows Lee locally, he moved on to Ards soon after signing for Valley. He still was registered for Valley because you could dual sign in those days, but he started his Irish League career at Ards, and he'd been playing a bit for Linfield in their Swifts as well. So those two guys, they were always had a chance to get on to do something more, whereas me and Crunchy would have been considered good enough local players. But that tremendous time. Ivan Graham was the manager, and Ivan was like the Brian Clough. He was a Nottingham Forest supporter, and that's the way he approached management. Now he'd give you a cuff around the head like Brian Clough would have maybe done. Wasn't very tactical or into that side of the game, and always had someone to train the team. Him and Alfie used to sit in the van and watch you train, and there'd be Kenny Jess or Willie John Heaney or somebody doing the training. So it was the epitome of just social football, recreational football, having a bit of fun,
enjoying it.
And I suppose that's why I didn't stay at Valley then, because after that, moved on to start to get noticed in youth football because we were still playing that. And started to get opportunities. Went to the Milk Cup team, County Down Milk Cup team, and played in it. And as soon as it was looking back now with hindsight, the managers were crafty in the Milk Cup. When they got the trials done and they got maybe their 18 picked, all of the different managers and coaches were all assigned to a particular Irish League club. In the County Down team at the time, there was Glenavon and Glentoran coaches and Bangor coaches and Linfield coaches, and they all would have been getting you and trying to get you signed. So I fell for that. One of the boys came and says, would you consider coming to Glenavon? So I just, Glenavon, flip. This is Glenavon, so. And they were playing like UEFA Cup football and stuff, and the football nerd in me was very aware of this. So I signed. I was basically the first person to ask me. And then through that, Glentoran, they wanted me to go as well, but I'd already signed for Glenavon. But again, going through that, got opportunities to play a bit for Glenavon in their third team in the odd game for the reserves. Still very young, still 15, 16. Enjoyed it as well, but the thing would be that I would regret the way I approached it, because I was too much of a home bird. I got it too easy. Maybe playing around here, you were seen as one of the best players. When you went there, you had to really work hard to stand out.
Yeah, because they were probably pulling players in from all over the country and had a big player pool. And
absolutely. So you had to really. But I know now, thinking back, there's certain things you think about, and you would have learned a lot off the players you were playing with and off the coaches. You yourself, Matt, have had that experience of Warren Point and Glenavon academies, and you would know it's moved on and even progressed now. It's much better now, but you would know that the coaching level it's much superior.
It just wouldn't be your lap with your pitch and play a match. There would be a lot more technical and tactical detail in it that maybe you weren't used to coming through your younger days.
That's right. So to get onto the Kilkeel youth team or Annalong youth team locally, you just had to be the best young player about here locally. But when you're in Glenavon and things like that, it was like regionalised. So you were competing against players from across County Down, County Armagh, County Tyrone, Belfast to get into that. I only stayed there like 3-4 months, and I regret only staying there for that time.
And in and around that team and the Milk Cup and the Glenavon team, was there any names that are maybe still involved in the game to today? Or
well, there's quite a few in the County Down team went on to have Irish League careers, and I wouldn't really mention them because maybe people don't know them. It's a while ago now. But you at the time in Glenavon, around the team would have been Jared McMahon, who went to Spurs.
Yes.
But like he would have been older and he would have been established in the reserves, even the first team at the time, but still was of a fairly young age. And everything around Glenavon was about Jared getting over to Spurs because he had the deal done. And everybody was then, that was their cat. But in terms of the Glenavon stuff, they definitely were playing with better players, and it was much more challenging to play your match on a Saturday because you were playing against your Linfields and teams like this who had real youth internationals. And I remember one time, it was a friendly game at Junior Stadium, and Glenavon were to play Northern Ireland Schoolboys, but we were playing they were playing us a year up, so we were a year older than the schoolboy team. And then I came out, and who was up against but Ricky Graham?
Yes,
he was playing for Northern Ireland Schoolboys, and I'll never forget the running I had to do that night. Always knew Ricky was unbelievable. Went on to sign for QPR and have a good professional career. But I remember playing against him and seeing that this is the level here you're going to be playing at week in, week out. And I suppose I was the home bird, and to my detriment, I gave up there too early and went back and actually signed for Ballyvey then.
Yes.
So when I played for Ballyvey for a season, I had a broken ankle that year, but got fit. And we were able to win the Division 1 title at the time, and another cup. I can't even remember what you call it. But still, this is all you're only 16, 17. You're only
still very young.
And that was probably something that I regret in terms of my football. You mentioned, I played for all 4 clubs. I did move about too much because you were seen to be somebody who was half decent. So then you were always being asked. Whereas if you had been a good player and just been let get on with it at one club, and I sort of regret that I didn't stick it out. Valley was the first club I joined to, the club that I latterly was at, and is my club, I suppose, in a way. And I wish I had just stayed there to a degree, than go around the others. But I suppose you were young and naive, and you get wiser and older, I suppose.
So you also had a short time at Dramara. Can you kind of explain where that came? Because Dramara's a wee bit out of the way to the other local teams, but if you could just kind of explain how that materialised, that move. So
Dramara, going back to then and still today, have good facilities, and I suppose again it was about 18, 19 at this point, and this is still being young, and somebody comes asking. They were playing at a good level. They were playing 1A in the amateur league, which is pretty decent standard. Level, and they were signing players from all over the place, and they had a manager called Davy Mills who won the Irish League with Portadown and played the European Cup for Portadown and stuff. So a local sort of Irish League boy who knew his football, and he came along with another gentleman, watched a few Valley games that I was playing for, and then he said, "We want you to come down." So I was very reluctant to start, and I still wasn't driving when I was 18, 19. But I made the decision, right, I'll give this a go, because they really impressed me with their setup and what they wanted to do and all the rest of it. But it only lasted a short time there, because I can remember having to bus it. So they would have looked after me, and days they would have paid for a taxi, even if you stayed on late after a game.
Yeah.
They paid for a taxi home to Kilkeel. But I felt guilty doing that. So I bussed it. So they would have got me back to Newcastle bus centre. And I remember one Saturday evening, I was sitting in the bus centre in Newcastle, and I was texting the boys, what we're doing tonight, all the mates. And so I rung, and Belmont or wherever it was tonight, and I heard them all, the crack, and they was laughing, and they were obviously having a pint after their football.
Yeah.
I was sitting in this bus station.
In the bus station on a Saturday evening.
What am I doing here? What am I doing? And then, so I suppose, again, naively, maybe should have stuck at Dramara again and tested myself to try and get better, and progressed football wise, instead of running for home to get a comfortable time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to be prepared to invest time in yourself and have patience and try and develop. But I just wanted the easy life.
Yeah.
I wanted to be with my mates, handy on a Saturday afternoon, and then go and do your Saturday social activities after that, which was, again, is something I kind of regret a wee bit. And I suppose to the people you're working with PSA, that would be a key message to them. Try and get out of your comfort zone. Try and go and challenge yourself in an environment maybe you're not as comfortable in, but actually you'll be getting better. So that's maybe something that I would say to a young self if I had the opportunity, which I'm never going to have. But no, I just wanted the easy life. But that year we did go back to Valley, and we won the Harry Clark Cup that year.
You were still very young.
Still young. I remember we played. Actually, the final was a Friday night. We're all at university at the time. We had played in a university cup that there was on the Thursday before this final on the Friday. But on them days, you were fit. You could run all day.
You look back on them, and as you said earlier, you played hockey in the morning, football for the youth in mid morning, and then your match in the afternoon. And then there's problems when kids and players are asked to train 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week nowadays. But looking back a few years ago, you wouldn't have thought twice of doing some kind of sporting activity 7 days a week if you had the chance.
That's it. You were always being active. I can even remember in Rodney's days, I would have run to training. I would have run to training, did my training, and then I would have run home.
Ran home again.
So you were just conditioned yourself running about. But in terms of the hockey stuff, I was a hopeless hockey player, but they made me play. I think it was to make up the numbers. But there was nearly, if you don't play hockey here, you're not going to get playing for the school football team, and then it's sort of you had to do. But at the same time, it was good to be involved in another sport. Because again, we got to the hockey team. We got to go to All Ireland tournaments in Dublin and Belfast and stuff like that, and that was a good experience because it was a good level of sport. And again, testing yourself in another sport. And I suppose one thing I've noticed in terms of multi-sport stuff, maybe not so much hockey and football being a combination, but you're bound to have come across this where coaches now are looking at other sports. I know at Manchester United, they get the young players to play all different kinds of sports because they're developing different range of skills and movements.
Even for my own development as a coach, I would listen to other managers from different sports, podcasts from different sports, just to pick up, because at the end of the day, you're working with people no matter what sport you're involved in.
Absolutely.
And you have to be fit and you have to be active, so you can glean things from other sports, to bring into whatever your main sport is to learn. And I'm sure that was the same whenever you were, young, playing whatever sport it was. You were fit to do each sport.
That's it. And even I looked at GAA was always quite that wee bit more nearly professional. You were always interested in, one thing that's been lost, I think, in terms of, I've always noticed that young GAA players concentrate a lot on their strength and conditioning, whereas in football we don't, for some reason, at local level here. You'll see the young GAA players doing winter programs where they're all in the gym, they're doing their weights and they're building their core strength, and that's really creating a really strong athlete. And again, if we had have had, if I, in my day, if I had stuck out at youth football, you would maybe be asked to do a bit more of that strength and conditioning work, because that meant that you were going to get quicker, you're going to have more stamina, You're also going to have more strength to play the game. You're going to reduce your injuries. This is something I still think we neglect. But anyway, that's something for you coaches to figure out.
Yes. So that was back to the Valley then, in and around the age 20 or so?
Around that, yeah.
And that was you then settled then for the next foreseeable?
Boys like Sansi would have ripped me for... it was one time I was caught wearing a Dramara tracksuit. They were like, oh, well, you're a big fancy Dramara track. Well, this is the type before Valley thought about tracksuits and stuff, you know. It was a bit of a novelty thing, teamwear, but... so I was brought back and I had to suppose suffer you're back again and all that crack, but that was their way of saying welcome back.
Yes.
And I suppose that Valley team, it was a great team to play in. You would have had people like Timmy Stevenson in goals, who was a super goalkeeper. You would have had people like Ian McMath, Andy Park playing in it. You would have had Johnny Newell, Craig McKee. You had Alan Henning, David Sands, Doot, Paul Graham, Gareth Graham. And again, we were all around. Most of the core of the team was all the one age. There was only really a year, 2 years separating, and it was really a bunch of friends getting into Ivan Graham's van and going and playing a game on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah. And we were quite good in Division 1 level. We won it. I think the season we won Division 1, we won 19 out of 20 games. The game we lost, half the team was in Tenerife and holidays together. But and we won a trophy as well that year called the Donald Shield. So we won the double. And that was our first taste of sort of senior football success. We thought this was going to be easy because we were all still 2021. Yeah. But then we got up into the Premier and we were top like 3 side for about 3-4 seasons.
And was this Newcastle League?
Newcastle League in the Premier Division of it. So, but that wasn't the days. It was your Newcastle first teams and all of that, and it was quite competitive. We got up and we were making a good stab at it, but we always lacked. We had good forwards, like we had Richard Forsythe who would get you 15-20 goals, but was like more like a wide attacking player. We had Paul Graham, who was so skillful. Yeah. Like if you remember the Arsenal player Canoe, just with the ball, so it could do things that were unbelievable. And Paul again would have weighed in with maybe 15 goals, but we never had that poacher number 9. Our fella, like if Andy Graham, the person I always thought we had would have been Ian Graham. We potentially would have won the league. Yeah. But we always lacked just that guy who was going to guarantee us the 20 to 30 goals that you needed to win the league. But good team to play in, great crack. I remember going to one game and we were going to cross on the ferry, from Strangford to Portaferry. You went across there to play Ballycam Celtic in Portaferry. Yeah. And Big Roger was a goalkeeper, and he says, "Can't wait for this trip on Saturday. We're getting the boat." And I says, "Aye, yeah." And he says, "How much money do you think you need for the boat?" I says, "Roger, what do you mean?" He says, the wee machines and all the play. he thought it was a Stanley. But it was the ferry from Portaferry. But just, there's some great memories, like some stories that you couldn't tell again, but some brilliant memories. And it really was, it was fun, and we're a reasonable enough side. And I suppose if we had got a wee bit more organised in terms of even the club management, and the players had took it a wee bit more serious. Like there was nights you would turned up at training, and a bit like tonight, wet and windy, and the boys would have pulled in at the Esplanade car park in the car and the heater on, and you've looked around the car park, maybe another car come in, maybe another one, but there's maybe only 6 people there at this stage. So then there was everybody sitting in the car. Well, we'll get out tonight and train, so that was the level of.
You probably weren't blessed with a full 3G floodlit pitch back then.
No, that was the days of you run around the lights at the Esplanade. Yeah. But again, I think that's an example of it was recreational fun football. We thought we were good, but I suppose we weren't doing it the right way.
But you never thought of it like that at the time. This was the best thing, and that's just the way it was. Again,
it was your comfort zone. You just wanted to play your football on a Saturday, and that was the lazy attitude. Whereas we had to prepare. We should have been preparing a wee bit better, even at that level. I think I mentioned to you before that team underachieved. We didn't win maybe the things that we should have done. And then I suppose when we got up a bit, we played against a Ballyvey team that was just a real workman team. They worked so hard. And I know they trained really hard. And to me, I suppose if I think back, I watched a thing recently where Gary Neville was interviewing Stephen Gerrard, and there they were having a conversation about the Liverpool team was good and the good players, and the United team of the late 90s, early 2000s was a great team too. But Neville said privately, United had upped their game in terms of training.
Mm-hmm.
Arsene Wenger gets a lot of credit for Arsenal and the continental approach to training and conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
But actually United had been at that,
mm-hmm.
quietly doing that. And he says that's why they won. They weren't necessarily a better football team than the Liverpool team at the time. But they were fitter and they were hungrier and they prepared much better. And we always know Man United fans, that the Fergie time, we thought it was some spell Alex Ferguson had. It wasn't really. It was because the players were so conditioned. He was doing the wee psychological thing with the pointing at the watch and stuff, but the players were conditioned
to go right to the very end,
to make good in that period of the game. And I suppose I compare that to the Liverpool team of the time were a bit like the Spice Boys. If you remember them turning up with the white suits on in 95, maybe you're too young.
A little bit before my time, but I have seen videos and pictures and whatnot.
They were like out in the town kind of boys. Spice Boys would have been seen around all the clubs. United were like dull, let's train, concentrate on our football. And in a way, that's what I compared the Ballyvey team and the Valley team at the time. We thought we were good, but we were the Spice Boys because we weren't preparing right. The Ballyvey team were preparing. They had a manager who would have steered them and made them train. And as a group, you saw that when you came to play against them, they were a machine. There was people like your McConnells and your Mains and even your David Morrises, who was a real pain for us.
A real thorn in the Valley side down the years, wasn't it?
They were a really fit team. I think we were possibly a better footballing team, but they were hungrier and they were better trained than us. So that's just a wee bit in reflection in terms of that Valley time. But great times, great friendships still to this day. Would it change it? Maybe, but still we've got some great memories from playing. So
Ricky, your playing career was brought to a very unfortunate premature end, would you say?
It definitely was brought to a stop. I suppose a wee bit of context to it. I had to stay out of football for about a year, about 3 years before I broke my leg because I got an eye injury. I had to go through 3 or 4 operations, get the violin out here, but I got back from that, and that was a big thing to get back playing because I really missed playing and I missed the social side of it and the connections. And then playing away for Valley again, where we're doing okay. Leslie Maven and stuff was playing for the team, and it took us up a wee bit of a level. He was fantastic. We were a team still looking to win things, and then we were always doing well in the junior shields, and we were always getting to the 5th round and the quarterfinals and things like that. So one week we were playing a team from Belfast called White Rock. So try not to stereotype here, but we're playing this team and we were beating them 2-1. It had been a tough game. It was quite physical. There was a wee bit of needle in the game, and we got to injury time. So we were 2-1 up, and we were playing at Binion Park on the big grass pitch. And I remember somebody played a ball to me, and I had a fullback to take on. So I had 10 yards to go before I met the fullback. So basically I put the ball over his head, and I thought, I'm going to take this to the corner. We're in injury time. We're 2-1 up. I'm going to take it to the corner, keep the ball, see the game out. So I put it over his head. I goes into a big charge and sprint. And as I'm going by him, he cuts across me. So I flip over the body, and I land, and I'm sitting on my bum, actually, with my 2 legs out in front of me. I turn around going, sick referee, that's wild tackle, that's a free kick. So I look down at my leg, and the foot is pointing at this really awkward position. It's nearly pointing back towards me.
Yes.
And then I noticed out of my sock, there's this thing pointing out of my sock. I'm going,
that shouldn't be there.
What's happened here? So I can remember thinking, one of the first things was, I think that's my foot doing that. I think that's the bone going that way. And the first thought was, how did they fix this? So I was going, flip me. And it was a year, it was the month of February. And the previous year, if you remember a player called Eduardo.
For Arsenal.
He had been playing against Birmingham. He got the exact same injury where his foot nearly looked like it was hanging off. I'm overdoing it a wee bit saying that, obviously, but I had the same injury. So I can remember I was lying on the pitch, and I can remember shouting to Alfie. I don't know why I shouted for Alfie because he's no first aid at all. Well, I was sort of, but there was no big pain or anything, And I can remember everybody coming around and putting coats on, and I could see the concern in people's faces, and I already knew by looking at it, this isn't good. So I lay down, and somebody says, called an ambulance, and I can remember Davy Hutchinson, the ambulance man, and them coming, reversing the ambulance into the field. I goes, right, there's been no pain in this so far, but they're going to move me.
Mm-hmm.
And then my foot might start flopping about. I says, right, I need some of this. So I says, Davy, could you give me some gas like you give to women when they're pregnant? So he gave me this and sucked this into me. And I was high as a kite, and they put me onto a stretcher. I can remember they're carrying me out to the gate. And you know big Gary Campbell, who was still got in Witch Valley games, a Leeds United supporter. He's carrying me at this time. I remember going, Gary, tell him to not forget to lift my foot off the pitch. Because I thought my foot was off there because it was high. I thought it was sitting on the pitch. But anyway, I'm in the ambulance and we're going to Daisy Hill. And I remember lying, and I can't remember who was in it with me, but there was somebody in it with me. But I was lying, and I'm high as a kite now because of the gas. And the old noise of the ambulance going along, I thought it was in the Camry, and the music was just real crap. I was lying there with my eyes shut. I thought it was in the back of the Camry. And then I remember getting to the hospital and just being then starting to wear off.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality of the situation started to hit me then when I could see the doctors and all like looking at this. And so I was referred straight away to the Royal, and got an operation in the Royal the next morning, and got a plate and stuff like that put into it. So it was quite an horrific injury.
It was an open fracture.
It was a compound fracture. So basically, I dislocated my ankle. So the ankle is dislocated, and the bone has penetrated the skin. So I have a scar that runs across the bottom of the inside of my ankle where the bone came out. I've got like the range of movement's not what it was, but like it's not really anything that would have stopped me returning to football. But I'd just been married in December before this injury in February, and I thought, flip me, I've got a mortgage now and stuff, and I've got a wife, and potentially, we're looking to start a family. Do I want to take this chance to go back to football, particularly now that this had happened to me? And it was, I don't want to over talk it, but it was something that I remember even back to wee five-a-sides and things, and you were very like, this might be a weak area, or this cannot happen to me again. And
so it wasn't a case of the injury restricted you from going back to football.
No,
it was just you weren't prepared to take the chance of it happening again, and
more so, yeah. So I did go back and like five-a-side football and stuff like that, but I never went back to play park football. Played the odd game like for the seconds or thirds, but like that's when they had exhausted their phone books and needed somebody to put on a shirt. But never really had any desire to get back at it. So I thought, no, I've got too many other things now I need to look after. And probably I was a little bit of a fear, card about it, and thinking, I don't want this happening again. I don't want to put myself in that position. Because it was, there was a long recovery from it. And there was a couple of years of physio and, doing stuff to get yourself active again. Because if I had just said, it'll fix itself when it fixes itself, I wouldn't have got the range back that I did.
Movement back, yeah.
Yeah, so, no, it just was, my own decision was I could still play. I'm not going to.
And did you ever have that real desire to go back, or did you ever think, I'm going back, or I'm definitely going back, or was as soon as that happened, was that just a point blank, that's it, and that's just the way it is?
No, I was clear in my decision. I knew that I waited all up for a while, obviously, but I made my decision. Says, right, I've made that. I've made it for the right reasons. That I missed playing football, in terms of the 2:00 on a Saturday stuff. Absolutely missed it. But just I'd made my decision, and just the pros vastly outweighed the cons. So I just said, and I suppose Alfie and Ivan then, everybody was very good, very supportive. I think they realised that had been a bit traumatic, the whole thing. But they said, come and, basically I was a water ball guy for them for a while, and I was able to give a wee bit of a say before games, but it wasn't really impacting what the team were doing.
And if you hadn't have got the injury, you would have played on for many years.
Like I say this, I don't want to sound pompous, but I was always quite fit, in terms of in my younger years, and even, would have been good stamina and did a bit of extra training stuff. So I would have saw myself at a time, right, I'm going to play here deep into my late 30s and even maybe replicate Willie John Glennie playing at 50. But I was all on for playing as long as I could, whether it would have been for Valley fifths or whatever it would
just
have
to play
been.
football.
Yeah, but when that happened, no, I had to weigh everything up, and I said, can't be taking that chance.
So that was the end of your playing career. You then made the transition from playing into management. Was management always something you had in your head? Was coaching something you were interested in? Or, how did that come about? Or how did you end up? Was there much of a gap between your playing and then moving into management? Or, how did the move come about?
So to be a manager, I never really thought I'm going to be a manager. I always had an interest in the tactical and technical side of the game. Some people would have sickened talking about that, to be honest with you, over maybe analysed it and talked about football too much. But never really had, ambitions or plans to be a manager or even a coach. And I suppose I was at a loose end. As I say, Ivan and Alfie invited me to come along and in name be a coach, but I wasn't really, because I wasn't really, contributing to training sessions. I wasn't really contributing to the team or picking up the team or anything like that. So there was a couple of years went by, and then an unfortunate accident happened to Ivan. Ivan, which is I believe is probably unique in this world, and I mean that. He was manager for 39 years. So the Valley had never ever had a different manager than Ivan Graham. But unfortunately, Ivan was at work one day and a mixer fell over and caught his leg. So that was going to be him. He was off his feet, literally. He had a big recovery ahead of him. He wasn't going to be able to run after a football team. So Valley as a club, for the first time, had to think about appointing a first team manager.
And when you heard that, did you think straight away,
no,
I'm going to go for it, I want that, that's mine?
Spud, Glenn Donaldson, had been second team manager, and Glenn had a great way about him in terms of dealing with people. He was well respected within the club. He'd never really played a stint for the first team, but was a skillful player, one of the best players for the second team, and then went on to become second team manager. And I suppose a very intelligent guy, well thought of about the club. And I thought, right, I'll probably be Glenn now, get the chance to do this. So I didn't really think, I don't even think I'll go for this. So Valley put it in the newspaper and stuff, and I don't know if they had anybody really apply for it, but I know one other gentleman who was part of the youth setup at the time put his name forward, and again a very good candidate in that he had coached a really good wee youth team over about 4, 5, 6 year period, and they had been really good, and a lot of that team now are part of the club, whether it's first team, second team, third team, and he sort of wanted it. And then I got a call out of the blue from what I would describe as senior players who were still out the first team. He says, "Will you not do this?" And then I got talking to Spud and says, "Well, this makes sense for you to do it. You've served your time in the seconds and stuff. Everybody thinks a lot of you. Why don't you do it?" But he had just got a job and moved to Belfast, and he thought he couldn't really commit to it. So I don't even know. I can remember I was down at Stormont actually for a meeting. I was in Stormont and I was driving home from it, and the Valley were having a meeting that evening. And again, the phone had been going, and we getting a few messages. You got to put your name forward for this because the meeting's tonight. And even I thought about it, and I suppose by the time I reached down along on the way home, I says, "Right, I'll give this a go." Like this was all in the evening of the whole thing. So you had to go up and you had to really do like an interview of the whole committee, and the Valley committee was like 15 or 20 boys. And I suppose looking back on it now, I got to a point even at the end of the interview when they were weighing the whole thing up. Okay, I'll not bother. Sure, listen, let David, because it was very close. So Davey had on the committee was a lot of people who were involved in the youth football, and they'd seen the good job Davey did with the youth team, and probably saw him like, here's Ricky, like he'll not even do it properly. Maybe is he going to stick at it? And there was doubts around my commitment to it, whether I would take it seriously enough and all of that. But it was a very close thing. At one point I said, listen, let Davey. And then everybody's like, no, hold on. But they come up with a formula anyway that I was offered the job. And probably now I would look back on it and go, if we were doing this properly as in recruitment, I would look at the CVs and I would go, I wouldn't have been the best choice because I hadn't did any coaching. I could talk about football and stuff and play it half decently when I played for Valley, but was never like a manager or coach. So Davey would have been, for me, if I'm being objective about this, he would have been the person to get it. But and I know one of the first things we did after that was said, right, Davey, would you like to be the reserve team manager? Because recognised that he was a guy who had been doing a good job with the youth and a lot of qualities that he could bring into managing the team. And again, my point of view, I started then to think about strategically being a manager of a club.
Yeah.
But it was, in a way, Valley were, and I mean this with respect to the people at the time, I'm sort of kind of wanting to call it how it was at the time. They were second bottom of the Newcastle League.
Mm-hmm.
They had gone through a tough season, and even though they went through a tough season, Ivan would have continued to be manager because it was his club, still is his club, but they wouldn't have really even thought to change it. But I was looking in probably from the outside, seeing what was happening. The Annalong team of that time, they had Stevie Coatler, they had Fowler playing for them, they had JC.
Yes.
I think Frank Hyland was the manager.
Myself.
You were maybe playing in it. That was a good Annalong team, and I remember them. I went to a game in Annalong, and I think it was 3 or 4-1 to Annalong, and were very comfortable. Made Valley look very, very poor because it was at the time the Valley were struggling. So got the job and thought, right, well, we'll make small improvements here and try and get her going the right way. But once you get into it, the whole thing just consumes you.
Yeah, it takes over you.
It takes over you, and hopefully allows you to do a good job. But in terms of balancing life and trying to take a step back, and you overdo it, maybe you overdo it. But that first season, then we went and got Fowler and JC back, and I suppose that was through a bit of charm, trying to get these boys back because they had come through the Valley youth teams. So recruitment was a very important thing, and it is with any manager. You need to have good players. You can think you're the best manager or coach, but you need to have good players. So we went about recruiting maybe 3 or 4 boys in to improve the team. I made some changes, brought some of the younger players through, who are about like your Ryan Stevensons at the time and Phil Johnstons and Stevie Patts. Sort of trying to give them an opportunity. So in that first season, we had saw progress because we could chart it and I suppose measure it. We came, I think, 3rd or 4th. So that was a big jump. That was a jump of 8 or 9 places up the league. In the first season, we by default reached the County Antrim Junior Shield final.
I think I do remember that.
We played in the semi-final and were well beaten by a team called Carnini Rangers. And we played. For me, that's when I started to think, we're doing something right here, because we went to play a semi-final at Distilleries Ground. Floodlights midweek. We got off the bus and we felt there was a bit of a big crowd.
You thought you'd arrived.
You did. You thought, hey, this is. So we got a taste for that higher bit of football, and that fueled then the obsession because you just wanted to continue doing well. So even though we got beat 4-0, well beaten in the team, it was an education watching that side that beat us. But they had played an ineligible player, so we got through to the final. And we got beaten in the final, and I still think that game that the other team scored in the first minute. And then we went on to sort of dominate the game without being able to convert our chances. And then they hit us in the very last minute because we were just bombing forward
trying to equalise.
But to me, measured that first season, goes, right, I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing here now. And I suppose then it says, right, what can we do strategically to separate the club? Because it was still hard to attract the players. It was like 6-7 players at Kilkeel that would have came and added to our team at Valley. There was a couple of players maybe at Annalong, there was a couple at Ballyveigh. Some of those players we were never able to get, but some of them we were.
Wasn't for lack of trying.
So, but I know going into the next season, we set about the summer and saying, right, how can we elevate the Valley here to be the primary local club in Mourne? And the start of that process was to take us to the Mid-Ulster League and try for intermediate football. So you were going to your players and the other teams to say, come join us because we're playing intermediate football now. At the time, you were allowed directly into intermediate B, and that was a stroke of luck.
Yes.
But again, it was thinking of a bigger strategy, and I was starting to do club plans and stuff, which tied into what I was doing then in work. So I was able to bring some of the learning from that into what I was doing at Valley. So I thought we need to get some of this in paper. We need to be able to measure what we're doing as a club. So it was about improving the standard we're playing at, improving the players that we had at the club, and that was also to pay a bit more attention to the youth teams as well, and making sure people had their pathway through to senior football. And also facilities was a big one. You mentioned the Esplanade earlier, and
even to this day, you know, when we're training up to 3G, and maybe the likes of Andy Green or whatever goes, would you not prefer to be running around the floodlights at the Esplanade or running around the street lights at the Esplanade or something? It always is. It's still to this day as a running joke.
No, and like when I explain to people, we actually parked our cars in a public car park and used the street lights to do running between cones using the street lights. They go like, he's crazy. And you add into that perception of Mourne being a place where there's no electric or running water, maybe. But and we did that, and we were the fittest team about though. See, we talked earlier about the Ballyvey team, and again, that was something I learned from my playing career. If your team is going to be a good team, the core thing it needs is its fitness. So we made the team, they were so fit. The team was so fit. And then we did a bit of football on the AstroTurf on the Wednesday night, but it was hopeless because the ball was moving too quick. You got your hour, and it was quite expensive for the hour, and you weren't able to do. So the facilities was a big thing that we wanted to improve as well. So those three things of improving the calibre of player, improving the standard we were playing at as a club, improving the calibre of player at the club, whether that was recruitment or bringing players through, and improving our facilities. And that, I suppose, mix of stuff then helped us to get a foothold to become on the Valley hero. And we started to get people to give us lip and be cheeky about us and maybe insult us. I thought to myself, well, I'm going to take that as a compliment.
No, you're doing something right.
People are starting to notice what we're doing. So we went into intermediate football in Mid-Ulster, and a brilliant decision for the club. Brilliant. So still, obviously, you're experienced in Mid-Ulster League football now. It's a really good league.
It is a very good standard,
So you
can see them by the local clubs following suit.
Yeah, that's right. You
know that you've kind of set the standard, and even though the other local teams have to start now in the bottom division, they're still trying to emulate what the Valley have done many years ago. And
again, I took that as a compliment, and our club took that as a compliment at the time, that we got look at the Valley running off. Never won the Newcastle League main league, but it was, you're going to let that hold you back, or are you going to make a strategic decision that sets us apart from the others, that actually we can overtake them? And I think to a degree, and again, this might not be a modest thing to say, I think Valley are the main club now, in terms of the standard they're playing at in Mourne. Maybe don't have the heritage and the pedigree and some of the rich history that some of the other clubs have, but we're working on that, or you're working on that now. So that's a wee challenge for you.
No pressure.
But no, Mid-Ulster League was brilliant. Started to play in the Irish Cup. For me, that was like, this is another wee indicator that this is interesting. We're playing in the National Cup competition here now. Like the first 3 years we couldn't buy a win in it, but we were playing in it. But then we did start to get some wins in it. We thought, we were getting to rounds where we were one win away from.
We were one win away last year, and we drew a team in our league and got beat. Watched that game. That was terrible, but
everything on the day that could have went wrong did go wrong. There was a player sent off.
Let's not discuss it too much.
But you know what? You're getting the players then locally are starting to say, I would love
to play on that.
I remember then, it took a couple of years to get out of intermediate B, and I put it down to lack of experience from the management to deal with being in a title race, and lack of experience in the players to be able to cope with that. So we got it third time around, and I suppose one of the other things that kept us back was good teams getting parachuted in. So we had Newry City to deal with. The first year we finished third, and we missed out 1 point on getting promoted. The second year Newry came in. We finished third, missed out a point again. And then the third year we won the league, and that was brilliant. And that was like the first big cup that we'd won as a club in a long time. The intermediate B title, and that followed. Then we got the Marshall Cup. We won it the following year and beat Newry City 4-1 in the final, and that was like Newry City had just been promoted back to the Irish League, and that was probably the the peak,
The highlight of
highlight.
Yeah.
We did win another couple of trophies after that, but for me the peak was Newry City.
Mhm.
It was because of the standard of opposition.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first cup final Valley had won. We'd had a terrible record in cup finals where you knew the score was going to be 2-0 and we were going to get beat.
Yeah.
And that became a thing that around the club, I got, even after a semi-final win, I noticed when we won semi-finals in the early days, it was yes, right, in the final. But then a few final defeats, you started to think,
oh no, not another final.
and it became a problem. It became a problem. And then so I was so delighted when we beat Newry City, and in big fashion, like 4-1, deserved it on the night.
Yeah.
Andy Graham was outstanding, a hat trick. But the whole
I remember
team,
remember my mum and dad at that game. I was at a awards night
Yeah.
for Glenavon, and they were on the phone, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1. I was like, that's incredible.
that's right, here, Johnny. He started, I think, in right midfield. Again, he would have still, so he would have been late teens.
Yeah, would have been, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I know he enjoyed winning that because of good memories of him. Yeah, after. But no, so Valley, it was a brilliant time. So we achieved from where we were, second bottom of Newcastle League. We had some great experience. We things that are maybe silly to other people. Remember, we got drew against Glenavon in the Mid Ulster Cup. Now you and me know that the Mid Ulster Cup is not very important to the big teams.
No, it's not.
But for Valley, I mind we took about 200 people to Moorview Park.
Even still, your objective is finishing the top four, isn't it, of the Intermediate League to get, it's like the Champions League, isn't it, in the Premier League, to get to the Mid Ulster Cup, and just to get a night at Milltown or Shamrock Park, or no matter who you're playing against, could be under 12s, just to get a night under lights. It's such a big deal for local clubs. Yeah. So it is. So
we got Glenavon's our first experience of that. The pitch was lovely. We'd brought like 200 people, and we got beat 6-1. Yeah. But we were 6-0 down, and Thomas Graham scored a consolation goal right at the end, and the whole place was banging the seats, and the Valley supporters, and we just were in the dugout going, "Oh, that's so funny! It's so good! It's so heartwarming as well." People were realistic in terms of who we were, a club with very little pedigree, going and getting that opportunity. We've had other opportunities where we run teams close, like we played Warren Point, and they put out a pretty strong team. I was sort of crapping myself when I seen their team sheet going, oh flip. But Andy McMath, I'll say this, he should have got us a draw. He flipped it at an open goal and smacked it against the crossbar from about 10 yards out. But I know Andy can cope with that. But we even played Portadown then. I mind one night they thrashed us 8-0. Yeah. And it was hard, that was hard. Then we got them again the following year, and it's going, oh no, not going up here. I'd hardly get the boys to turn up. But we did go, and the players, to be fair, said about the task of trying to improve the scoreline. So we went in at half time 0-0 in the second game. Yes. And the boys have been very disciplined. We'd kept their shape, and everybody's working hard, and not going off on wee solo runs to try and press the ball and get lost. And the team kept its shape. And then we went out, we got beat 2-0. They scored 2 really good goals. But for me again, Valley Rangers, that was progress. Yeah, from 8-0 to 2-0. And again playing at Shamrock Park. So some brilliant, and then there's all the other wee things that aren't winning trophies or playing in big grounds that just were so good about being part of that. Yeah. And I suppose with my age, I wasn't that much older than the players, so it was easy to relate to them. Yeah. A lot of them I had played with and stuff like that as well. But no, it was fun.
So your managerial career has been very successful, and there's obviously been a lot of highlights and memories, but it came to an end. Was there a light bulb moment where you thought this is it over, or was it a gradual thing, or what was your reasons for giving it up?
It wasn't a light bulb moment, it was a gradual thing. So first, it was 8 years all in. The first 6 years, absolute joy. It was, as I said already, it was too serious. But like everybody, you say to somebody, don't take it serious when they're in the job. It's impossible because they want to do the best they can, and you'll be like that now,
100%. Yeah.
But suppose after we won the Marshall Cup one, and then we won again Premier Cup that Christmas, and then we won another one in the May, and then a couple of players started to get to an age where they, or maybe even like one player left who was a significant player in the team. We still went out those latter 2 seasons and did okay. we finished, we're still getting the cup finals. We've got the Bob Ratcliffe Cup final. We've got the Marshall Cup final.
And you also have to bear in mind the league was improving. Rapidly, and there was a lot of teams had a lot of financial benefits that maybe the Valley didn't have.
That's right.
So even though maybe you weren't doing as well as you did in previous years, there was lots of factors that were affecting that from outside of the club.
Absolutely. So there's external things that are making you start to think, can we still compete to the way we were? And we got used to being like with the first 2 seasons in Intermediate A, we finished second behind Newry City. We finished second behind Dollingstown. Both of those clubs went on to the Irish League after their promotion in those seasons. Had they not been about, had they already been in the Irish League, potentially you would have had a league title. But so looking at that, but also my own controllables in terms of the stuff I can control. So again, new businesses started in 2015, so left Valley probably 2 years after it started, 3 years after it started. But over that period of time, your business was starting to grow and it was being more demanding. And then I suppose in the final year of Valley, I took on another role within the football as well, and had a growing business, and goes, how can I cope with all this? And I knew myself that I wasn't being as committed. I was nowhere near as committed. Used to be, I would have planned my sessions maybe on a Sunday night, would have took 45 minutes, whether it was on the laptop or whether it was just on a piece of paper that I knew turned up. I was organised, the players turned up, things were set out, we got about our training, we made use of every minute of the training session. That started to slip in the final 2 seasons. And I suppose, the second to last season, I nearly went and people talked me out of it. And then it was always there. And then it was also a wee thing at the back of my mind, I was frightened because I was going to miss it so much. But you knew you couldn't do everything.
Yeah, something had to give.
Hard choices, and I suppose when you did what's important, my business became the important thing where I wanted to succeed at it. I wanted to succeed in the new role I took on with RSFA, and also had personal goals as well in terms of family and different things we wanted to do as a family. So wanting to do all of those and knowing I wasn't going to do as good a job at Valley, it came to a head. Now I'll be honest enough to say as well, there was probably a wee bit of stuff really focused my mind to what the decision was. So in the summer I went, and this 2 years ago the other day there, I got out of hospital. I'd been in hospital for eight days. I'd been quite ill, and then I came back and I wasn't able to get into training as much and stuff like that. And I knew the players were going, he doesn't want this as much anymore, or some of them misinterpreted my sickness as I'd give up. But then I probably had give up in the last 2 seasons, because I was going and wanting the burst and the energy and the highs of the Saturday, but I wasn't prepared.
You didn't want to do the work in between,
and that was again, being honest with myself, I was going, give somebody else a chance here. You've had a good run at it, you've had great time, some fun times as a club. We had really progressed, and it wasn't just me, it was loads of people committed and committee and doing fundraisers, and all the coaches at youth level giving up of their time, all the coaches at senior level giving up their time, and as a club we went in the right direction. It was nice to be at the heart of that. But just everything came to head and says, nah, it's time to give somebody else a go. And I know that I probably, being brutally honest, I probably fell out with a couple of players as well, and everything just, I was going, I don't have the stomach for this. It fell out with players every year, but I'd gone, I'm going to take them on. They're going to go and play for a particular team within the club if they're not going to do it our way. But at that point, after 2 years of going, do I want to do this? Can I do it? Do I have the time? It was time to go, and it was time to genuinely give people with energy and enthusiasm a chance. So that's come round to yourself and Darryl, and I was happy to be a part of that process where yourself and Darryl got into the roles, and they're doing a very good job out of it, I might add as well. So no, fun times, but nobody lasts forever in anything.
That's definitely not, especially not in even 8 years in the one position is a fantastic journey. So it is. So that's that, and you're involved in sport every day of the week anyway at the minute, aren't you, with your with your current job and your business that you have on the sideline. If you just want to briefly touch on that, because you are supporting PSA behind the scenes also.
Well, yeah, and in terms of PSA and in sport in general, I think we're in the middle of a pandemic at the minute, and it really has reinforced how important sport is to everybody. Whether that is for your social networks and your, keeping connected with people, which helps everybody's mental health, or to the physical side of it, that you're keeping physically healthy, which also has mental health benefits. We're all really appreciating that now.
Yeah.
In terms of how much
you miss it when you can't have it,
and how much it plays in life, whether it's the club being part of the community, or people being volunteers, administrators, spectators, or participants in sport. It adds so much to every community, and that's all across Northern Ireland, that's all across the world. So PSA, it'll be as well as the clubs, it'll have a role to play in getting us back to our normal community settings, to our normality in life. I think there will be more of a public conscience around keeping fit and healthy. And sport, in terms of my work and stuff with the RSFA, I know linking in with looking at how governments are responding. So first and foremost, their governments are acknowledging sports clubs, and the volunteers of those clubs have really played a big part in the emergency response, whether it's food packs or, helping people out in their community, to the point where sports clubs will have a big part to play in getting people back fit and healthy again. Yeah, working with the RSFA, it's only a part-time role, and I suppose that's the way I want it, because my business, Forsythe Consulting, that takes up most of my time in a week, and I'm working far too much. But that again, that's down to having personal goals and wanting to do things as best I can. The RSFA stuff is really interesting, so you could be dealing with funding from FIFA or UEFA, or government departments or trust funds, and you're doing like big strategic pieces of work. There's access you're getting in terms of UEFA and things, the learning from you're getting from people. You get the odd wee trip here and there. Like this time last year, we got over to sunny Glasgow for a study visit. There was 4 of us went. We got access all areas to Rangers and Celtic. So
fantastic.
You're getting in, you're learning about what community programs they're doing, because both of them have charitable arms. But you're also looking at their elite performance as well, what they're doing with their young players, and how they go about, contact time through the week. What sort of programs are they? What do they do with players who don't have a career in football? So, got to sit in the director's box for a Rangers match. So they go sit it and boot it.
Yes.
And it just made you feel like a VIP. We're very insignificant people to be at it, but it was lovely to go and wear a suit, get into the director's box. There's a room called the Blue Room. You're into it, you're fed and watered and all the rest of it, and out into this wee tiny director's box. And just that kind of experience of getting access to those clubs. So I'm trying to get over to Manchester United now after this. If the boss ever comes across this interview, we want to go to Man United next. So it's interesting. In terms of the consultancy stuff, a lot of it is sports consultancy, around funding, around strategic development, around club development, not just sport. So it sounds like I'm giving plugs here to businesses, but saying we're in Maiden Ward here, Jenna Stevenson, Robert McCall, and a guy called Scott King, we've started a new company called Third Sector Connect, and that's to work with like charities and faith-based groups and social enterprises to get them funding. Because we've all grown our own businesses to a point where we probably can't take on much more. So jointly create and share responsibility for another business where we all have skills and stuff to add. But in terms of Forsythe Consulting, working with I'd say about half the Premiership NIFL clubs, and then working with clubs at the whole way down the pyramid, working with other sports clubs, other community groups, other charities, other social enterprises as well. So it's no 2 days are the same, and it's very, very fortunate to be involved and employed in sport. Because you're going in every day, you're passionate about it, you're enthusiastic, and it's a good thing to be involved in.
Fantastic. Well, Ricky, that is our night drawn to a close. Thank you very much for your time. It was fantastic talking to you. We wish you all the best with your business and whatever else you go into in the future. And thank you very much.
Well, I know you've made the step, and I suppose when we're all starting our own businesses, you're a bit nervous about how it's going to go, and I know you've now made a significant step transition. So what I've seen so far in terms of the way you're doing all your content online and your social media stuff, the likes of this, that's all brilliant. It's fantastic. It'll expose your business. But what you're doing, from the referrals that I've heard of people getting your coaching and coming up and experiencing PSA, it's been all very, very positive. And I'll have to say, my wee nephew Jay, he's been on recent stuff with you. And I know he's benefiting from it. And I know other local young people, even senior players, are benefiting from the one-to-one training, because it's not something really that many people have experienced in this area. It's usually you turn up for your training on a Tuesday, Thursday night.
And that's it.
So I would encourage anyone who is serious about their football maybe to engage with yourself and get a program, because that one-to-one stuff will get you those percentage points.
That's it.
And get you out of your comfort zone, which is important to develop as a sports person. But as a business, I think you're following a passion, and I would wish you best of luck, and I'm sure our paths will cross in your journey.
Definitely will. Thank you very much, Ricky. Super.
Okay. Good man. Thanks, Matt.